Hi, I'm Dan. This is about universal rendering in React. So how many beginners do we have again in here? Raise your hand. What? Beginners? It's also not for you. But it's not going to be so bad, actually. So that's not too bad of a thing. So yeah. Well, universal React, well, while we're doing this, you can follow along. I'm going to be live coding, but not really. I have everything kind of mapped out in different commits on Git, so we're not going to be playing a stack trace whack-a-mole or anything like that. So yeah, feel free to check it out. Also, the slides are here, and there are links to the diffs on GitHub if you want to follow along and peek ahead or whatever. Has anyone worked with universal rendering in React at all? Hands? Awesome, cool. Yeah, it's not too bad. So we're going to go through and just build a little universal rendered app today. So yeah, what is universal rendering? It is also called isomorphic rendering. It's kind of that. It's now fallen into favor being called universal rendering. So if you want to find old stuff, by old I mean like 9 months old, just type in isomorphic, and you'll get some stuff. Yeah, so it brings together the best of single-page apps and server-rendered apps. You get data rendered from the server, and you can still navigate like you would in a single-page app and just have really fast transitions between routes. And it also unifies routing logic. So it has a lot of other good side effects as well. Yeah, let's go to the code. So if you happen to have the code, does anyone else need the URL? Does everyone see it? Just let me know before I go forward. Okay, cool. Yeah. Let's get to coding. So we are checked out right now on the first step. We're using Webpack and Babel, or Babel, I don't know, whatever. But yeah, we have, I forked this from Pete Hunt's Webpack example. I added an Express server. So right now it is just building the application through Webpack, and then there's an Express server. So this is how we'll start it. And there's no hot reloading or anything like that. It just starts up an Express server, and it's doing the Webpack build. While it's doing that, I will show you around here. So here's the Webpack config. It's just doing stage 1 Babel stuff. And that's that. And we have a bin file here, and it starts our server. Our server, it's just kind of serves a favicon, static assets. It also serves our dist folder. And we have a client that gets packaged up through Babel, and it renders to the root element. We have a static index file that has this root element, and it does the client. So if we go to localhost, here we go. It works. Thanks, everybody. That's it. I did it. Yeah, so, okay, that is where we're at with that. It doesn't really do much, just, I'm not going to focus on much of the application logic as much as the rendering, so that is rendered, and that's it. So let's go to step 2, and I guess I have a little slide. Check this out, step 2. All right. If you want that, you'll have to click on a link somewhere. I don't know how to do it. So yeah, let's modify the server to move forward toward our goal. I've already installed all the packages for this, so we don't have to deal with npm3 in its glory. So we're going to add React in here. React, got the adrenaline here, give me the jitters, but we'll get through it. And you know what, actually, I have a better thing. Instead of importing all that stuff, let's actually get to the meat and potatoes first. We can deal with that later. So we're going to add in a new middleware into Express that will render our app. So we got this in here, and we're going to get the HTML. Rendered HTML from render. And we're going to pull in a non-existent component right now. So that's going to be the server-only HTML component. It's going to render all the stuff that will trigger off the package up all the data from the server to the client. And I'm going to have a response in here that has the one thing that React can't provide is the doc type. So we just add that in here, and we do the rendered HTML. Oh, it's freaking out here. There we go. And status, we'll give it a 200. And response tool. So yeah, it doesn't like what I'm doing here. But that's just because we don't have React DOM in here. So from React. I can do it, guys, I promise. Yeah. All right. So there, no? Hey, yeah, thanks. This little plugin, by the way, for ESLint called ESLint import is awesome. Tells you when you're screwing up. Yeah, so that's, no semicolon, shut up. That's our server. We just need to add that HTML component now. So we're just going to do source. Oh, we're in here already. Components, html.js, add a little React component called HTML, and we're going to just pull in that stuff that we had in here, most of it. So we're just going to do that and delete it because we don't want Express serving that anymore. And plop it in here, and it's going to freak out. Yeah, we got this, we got that. We need to terminate that. And we don't, for some reason, got to do that. And yeah, that is our wonderful HTML component. Nothing's different. I really like single quotes, by the way. Everybody, you got to convert. You'll never turn back. So yeah, that should work. We're going to need to restart the server because there's no hot reloading or anything like that. It's going to rebuild everything, and hopefully we won't have to check out step 2. We'll see. Oh, no. Yeah. Whoops. Wait, what is that? Wait a second. Is it yelling? It was yelling at us. We just weren't listening. Damn. All right. While we're waiting for that to compile, so this does have one flaw already. So we're rendering that HTML component. It's there's going to be this, because we're still not really doing any like server rendering of what the client is putting into the DOM. There's going to be this. What the hell? Oh, I know what's up. You tricky. It's going to have that flash of unstyled content. What's going to happen is when we render it, it's going to first render that empty page first, that empty root. There's going to be nothing there, and then when the JavaScript finally loads up, it's going to show our stuff there. So you see if I kind of jam refresh, it's kind of flashing. We could put in data in there, and it would flash up. So that is kind of the start of doing universal rendering. We're rendering some stuff just kind of normally through React, so render to string. But now we're going to add in some extra data. So in here, where we have the HTML, we're going to add in some props. Equals, and we're going to call this one, we're going to call it home. And it's telling us it's not there. And all we have to do in React here is pass in these props and make sure that we're not forgetting anything dumb. So we're just going to make that component right now. Nope. I rely so heavily on just mashing my keyboard and hoping that Sublime knows what I want it to do. I see I typed that and it didn't come up, and I'm like, how do I even get this? All right. So yeah, that doesn't exist. We're going to make that And we have to make sure it looks just like it would in the example here. So, oh yeah, it's going to say it works. And last, we need to actually have our HTML component accept the props and put that in here. So what we're going to do is use React's dangerously set inner HTML equals. I know it's so bad, but say what? Oh yeah, I type like backwards sometimes. And then we're going to say this dot. Oh, actually, I have it like this. So make it content, and we're going to bring in the content here. Equals this stop props. What do we call it? We call it a component. Yeah. And it's going to yell at us, but yeah, so we can, I'm just going to ignore that. Screw that, we don't need it. So now this will, if once we reset it, what it's going to be doing is it's sending that through the component chain, and it's going to render that. But what's going to happen is it's still not going to work, and React's going to tell us an error if we're in development mode. We're going to render that home component, and it's going to put it into the DOM, and then React's going to pick up from the client, and the client says not to put that in there like that. It's going to instead get the element root and put in this component. They will mismatch. So the application is going to start off with this pre-rendered component, and then React's going to see it and put it in there, which will hopefully give us an error in here. Of course not. No, it's not supposed to work. Did I restart that guy? I didn't. And that's in the diff, and I just didn't follow along. Thank you. Yes. So we need to do React DOM, render to string that home component, and then not put a semicolon there. There we go. So yeah, now we're going to get that awesome error. And let me just check my notes, make sure I'm not forgetting anything here. Yes, should be done. You have got to be kidding me. This is where we fall back. Oh man, and the power will go on. That'd be awesome. Yeah, check out step 3. You suck. Oh. Git reset hard. Git. What the hell? Boom. I don't know what I forgot. Say what? So do we need to move? Huh. I wonder. Oh, It's odd. Anyway, that's the error I was looking for. Yeah. Woo. Live coding. So yeah, what's happening is, like I said, it's doing that. It's giving you this attempted to use markup. React does a checksum on what the server has rendered versus what your client is trying to pick up from. So the idea is that you render all the data you need from the server, package it up, send it all through React as a string, and then the client looks at it and just validates to make sure that the same data it has matches up. And it's usually really fast. And if it's not, then React falls back and renders what you have on the client, which is what's going on there. It has this it works huzzah thing. So yeah, next up, we're going to fix that. We're going to provide the data so that the client has what it needs to pick it up. And we're going to use a little tool called piping to help us refresh the server as well. So we're going to first get rid of this and instead just provide home. So that will rebuild the client. We don't need to refresh the server yet. However, we'll see now it will not be defined. I'm learning my lesson, guys. Why not to? So spits it out. Um, so now it's rebundling, and so now it's just rendering that same plain component. It matched up the stuff that we provided it, and that's all great. If, however, we were to change the data on the server, or and if we were to change the component itself, the home component, to add some extra exclamation points, it's going to rebuild on the client, but it's not going to match up on the server. We actually need to refresh the server too. So in order to do that, we are going to add this little tool called piping to the server, which gives us hot reload. So require piping. And that will enable it so that when we do changes on the server, it will just do that hot reload. There we go. So it's going to be working now. And if we change that home component to remove all of this, piping will see that the file's changed. It'll reload the server. Webpack will reload, and it'll work without error. So yeah, now we have all that data, but we're duplicating home, and it also doesn't really do that much. The important thing about server rendering is routing. So I am actually not going to type all this out. I'm going to spare you this for now. I've learned. I apologize. This is why we have backup plans. So we're going to move on to step 5. There we go. I'm going to show you the changes. So it's just doing that. Anyway, while it's doing that, there we go. So we have, I've implemented routing in this, so I've added an about route and all that. No navigation between it yet. Heyo. And what we have done is added a routes.js file right here that defines how the navigation across our app will work. And to help us with this, we're using React Router 2.0, and it's pretty cool. What it's doing here is it's telling us that we just have these 2 routes. It has also a catch-all route, so it's everything that we pass through to it, it will be going through our application, and then it's up to our server to use the correct response codes. Here in the server, I'm going to bring it down just a scotch. Where is that? Ah, there. We use React Router's match function. So a request comes in, and we pass it our routes file right here, and it parses how we have set up the navigation in our application, and also the URL. React Router's match function goes through and determines if it's a redirect, if it's an error, and all that. And if it's all good, it gives us this render props parameter that we can use to render our entire application that's ready to be packaged up and sent off to the client. So you can use inspecting some of the stuff passed back to us to determine if it's a 404 right here. And we created the router context, which is just, it's normally in React Router, you have something set up like this, where you have a router and you can provide it like a history to use HTML5 history, and then you just give it the routes. But in this case on the server, we just have to do, like per their API docs, you just dig a little deeper, you provided the router context because the router is dealing with things that the server can't. And yeah, so once we have a successful route, we provide this router context to our HTML component with the properties that it's aware of. So if you go to home, the render props are going to contain the things necessary for the home route, etc. And let's see. And then lastly, we can also handle 404 routes. So if we were to go to a route that doesn't that isn't handled, it actually will render our not found component that I added over here. So that's it. It shows that, but it has the proper response codes that you would expect. And let's see what else. Okay, I'm gonna go jump ahead to step. Which step am I on here? We're going to go up to step 6, and this is just adding a nav bar. So I've gone through and in the routes file, which is right here, you can leverage React routers. So this is both happening on the client and the server. You can build upon this routes file to describe your app as it grows. So for instance, on the / route, we can do things like wrap complete app-wide logic, such as a little nav bar. So if we refresh it, we'll see that. And now we have a way of navigating across these routes. So the interesting thing to note is that this is still a single-page application. React Router is using HTML5 push state to describe the title bar up there. And it's not causing any network requests to come through. So like if we go to this 404 route, you see we get the 404, but as we navigate around, there's no extra requests. But when we refresh the page, we still get what we would expect. There's also, you can jam it, there's no flash of unstyled content. It has all the data necessary to display the application. So yeah, that's already, I think, a great improvement because it can help improve page load time significantly. You have affordances for caching, as well as SEO and all the other benefits of server rendered apps, but still are able to just quickly navigate around because the client has all the information necessary to move throughout your application without causing any server requests. But we do still need to make server requests on route transitions. So right now there's a docs page, nothing's there, but consider the use case of when you go to this page, we want it to load documentation, but it goes through the API. So we have a docs endpoint, and it needs to load, all that stuff asynchronously before the route is transitioned to. So to handle that, there's a tool provided by, not James, what's his name? Damn, it's called Async Props by one of the React Router guys, Ryan Florence, thank you. And yeah, it is one way of accomplishing that with React Router. React Router has an ability to provide a render callback that happens beforehand. So if we can make a fake API right here. So get docs just returns a JSON response of our documents like you would expect. So there it is. And in documents, we have a docs component now. It just, you're expecting the props to have the docs. There is a static property, so that's one of the new stage 1 or something like that. But it's just a method on the actual, not the prototype, on the, anyway, it's wait, what? Yeah, it's on the class. Thank you. So it's there, not available to the instance. It's just available whenever the component is around, and it's provided to async props. So it is going to just do what it says. It's going to fetch that information and then provide it in here to your component properties. It allows you to co-locate your data that's being expected of the route, the docs route, so that whether it is hit by the server or it is transitioned to on the client, that data is going to be there. We can see this in action if we refresh here. So I just refreshed the page, and note that there's no extra data going on. We just have doc 1, doc 2, doc 3, and it's already embedded into the application. However, if we switch around, you'll see that it's making get docs requests, and we can exercise this by adding some extra stuff in there. It's going to reload the server real quick. I haven't refreshed this page at all. It's going to make that request and get that data back. The way that that's accomplished on the server is through adding, instead of returning that router context now, you give it async props. And you have to do another level of nesting to load props on server, which will go through all your component tree that's described by the router, and it'll pick out those static methods and and go get that data as necessary. And then on the client, you provide router with the async props as well, performs that data, action asynchronously. And yeah, so that is most of what I've prepared to share. It's kind of meant to be an overview of how universal rendering works. And yeah, let me skip ahead here to this. Yeah, screw all that. So there are some other really cool things you can do with universal rendering. I didn't describe in the example app any sort of state management or any sort of logic in the app itself. A lot of people are using Redux now, and there is a binding called Redux Async Connect that does just that. Also with Webpack, a lot of people use the loaders to do image loading and loading of styles, like via class names and all that stuff. That falls down when you're trying to render on the server, because on the when you package it through Babel, it just goes and grabs all the stuff and does whatever it needs to do. But on the server, it's going to see this require.css and just explode. So Webpack Isomorphic Tools is this crazy hack on Webpack that replaces all those requires and instead provides you with the location of it on the server. Have been using it at my workplace, and it's been working very nicely. There haven't been any bugs out of that thing. And lastly, if you're interested in server rendering and want to use it, this boilerplate, React Redux Universal Hot Example, is like a big toolbox full of crazy crap, and it has all this stuff and more. It's a good reference to see a really advanced project that has all these tools. And disclaimer, I'm a minor collaborator on that. After I started using it, it was just really cool. And but I would suggest looking at that, digging into it. It has a lot of these tools, some more as well, like that Webpack Isomorphic Tools. Yeah, it's been using universal rendering in applications in my workplace at Extensys, and it's been really nice so far, in my opinion. So yeah, I encourage you all to take a look. And yeah, does anyone have any questions? Please.
Yeah, so I was hoping that maybe you could speak a little bit to what universal rendering or isomorphic JavaScript has improved in your workflow. So like when you wake up and go to work today, you're like, this part of my job is so much better now that I use
It's really not the universal rendering as much as Webpack config files that I really love waking up to. Those are just the best. No, it actually encourages good patterns in React. So it does add more complexity to your application. There's no doubt about that. You have an extra layer, you have another concern, you have sometimes these weird errors of like, did not reuse markup, what the hell is going on? But because you're isolating where you can access the DOM, you don't have access to window or document in some cycles of your application. It helps point out when libraries are doing things that are not idiomatic of React, like using document and window outside of component did mount. And yeah, in the end, it helps you think about it in more than just that browser context. So it as well as the benefits of caching and page loading, the speed of loading pages and all that stuff, it kind of helps to think about it a little bit better. That's that could be like worse for some people, definitely. But yeah, that's my take on it.
Hi, I was just wondering, do you guys use any remote debugging tools by chance? And if you do, you make any recommendations?
Remote debugging,
Something like maybe like node inspector, so you can like set breakpoints server side.
I haven't used much. I really haven't come across too many nasty bugs on the server rendering that haven't been able to track down with like console logging. So yeah, because what it does is there's not too much stuff that's not also happening on the browser when there's a bug. Most of the logic that renders it on the server kind of settles down after a while. But no, I personally haven't used any, so nothing on the server that I recommend.
Yeah, I was wondering with the reloading and rebuilding your server with Webpack, if I'm just wondering, I've seen this pattern of when you're using Webpack on the server that you declare all your node modules as external to your bundle. Is that something you've tried? And because I'm wondering if the reason people do that is, does that make like the building process faster because you're like not bundling React up or something? Or
I've seen that like marking as externals, but we happen to be packaging for Electron too, so that's different. I haven't done that. I haven't really seen that for the browser client. There's.
Yeah, not for the browser. That would just be a node.
Yeah. So there's like as for things like because when you're doing things that are specific to that environment, like doing FS access, usually that's just going to be in code path that the server takes only. There's usually never any shared stuff that is going to cause problems like that.
Two questions. Do you use Webpack file loader? Have you run into any weird stuff there? And then the second one, have you run into any strange issues with versions of your JavaScript bundle in the browser and on the server side being different, and anything bad happening there?
For the second question, there's with Webpack, there's like the cache busting sort of file format. So I haven't had any sort of caching issues or something like that. I don't know if that answers that question completely. But the first question, file loader, what does that do? Because I might use something similar.
I think it creates a Webpack export in addition to like your like dist index.js or whatever that includes whatever assets you require, like copied from like your source tree into that output format. And then if you're doing like some sort of CDN deployment process, they would ideally be picked up by that as well and pushed to the CDN.
I haven't used that tool, obviously, but that Webpack Isomorphic tools does something similar. So I would check it out. I'm not sure if it does just that though. But most of the stuff that works with Webpack will work in this idiom. It's paradigm rather. So yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, I was wondering if you have any before and after metrics on page load improvement.
No, actually.
No? Okay.
Yeah. Funny enough, using this stuff, and we don't at our product. We're not actually deploying it to a server. I'm working on something else where that will be the case. I will have those metrics, but we have a unique sort of situation with that where we have multiple targets and all that stuff. But no, I don't have any metrics on that.
All right. Thanks.
I was just curious. If you could clarify what happens, because you showed us what happens when the server and the client disagree on the actual component logic and like the state of that. What happens when you just pass it different props? So like if something in the app happens that changes like the props and state of your current thing, and then the server finally finishes its thing and gives you a different set. Is it going to give that same error, or is it going to try and resolve it?
What's going to happen is the flow of it is a user hits the page for the first time and it's requesting a response from the server, and the server goes in and renders the whole thing, packages up the state, and is usually injecting stuff into the page like plain text. So for instance, if you have state management like Redux or something like that, the solution for that is in the server. You're passing in this bundle of props. You pass in Redux's dehydrated state, and then you just write it to the window object in that HTML component. But at the time that the response comes back from the server to the browser, it has all that data, and the only thing that can go wrong is that there's a mismatch of what the client is expecting. So there's no sort of asynchronous play of that. It's waiting for a response. It comes back, and then from then on out, you have the single page app sort of transition, and that's where that async props picks up and does the loading when you're transitioning between different links. Does that answer the question?
I'm thinking like, let's say that it's the same page, but like you have just a section of it flip or something on a toggle. It like just looks different. It's literally that in React, it would be a state change or something that's just like flipping true false.
Okay.
And it's not a full page transition. It's just, you know, the change of the state. And from the point when it's just the original render down to when the rehydration comes, what?
The render happens after everything has been dehydrated. So it will first rehydrate everything before React. So as React's building its componentry, if you're using state management like Redux, it's going to hydrate that before it even gives you the checksum validation. I hope I'm not incorrect in that, but I'm pretty certain that's what is the will
okay.
happen.
I might have just misunderstood. I thought that when you were showing us the very first thing, that what was happening was it was rendering kind of just like it was pre-rendering out into a string, and then not actually fully loading like React and everything, but that you could actually interact with it while everything else is finishing downloading, right?
No, so the response, if we go back to here, and I hit refresh on the docs page, what's going to happen is it comes back with that docs response, and in the element itself, let's see if I can see something useful in here. Like, for instance, async props writes that in there. It has everything it needs to get going, and really all React is doing is picking up where it left off. So there's no action in React. By the time when the response comes in, you see what the React page will look like. Then React just picks it up and runs all the component did mount callbacks.
So wires up a bit.
Yeah. So, yeah. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you very much for your time, everybody.